Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Lunch Table Podcast. And in a year making, we've been waiting to do this video. This video is a Doctor Who revisited. My friend over here, Dylan, is a remarkably huge fan of Doctor Who. He has a lot of thoughts on it. So delve with us as we revisit Doctor Who. Finally, Dylan, my friend, without further ado, start us off. Yes, there you go.
Well, guys, let me just start off by saying in 2010, Akram was probably the biggest Walking Dead fan. I was 100% the biggest Who fan for sure. Holy shit, you guys don't know how long I've been waiting to do this revisited. But yeah, we will be covering the 9th to the 12th Doctor, since Jodie Whittaker is still technically the current Doctor until Kurigawa's appearance in the special. But I think it's important that we talk about the rebooted series because it was so iconic, the revitalization and what kind of Russell T Davies and Stephen Moffat brought to the fans, for new and old fans, because it is the longest running sci-fi show in history, longer than Star Trek actually. And what I think Doctor Who does for sci-fi is, in a way, like Star Trek is, I say, like classical orchestra, but Doctor Who is kind of like rock and roll in a way. So let's start from season 1, which aired in 2005, which starred Christopher Eccleston and Billie Piper as, of course, the Doctor and Rose, respectively. I think it just captured so many hearts, and I think it was a good way to kind of bring the series back without having to reboot it, because a lot of sci-fi series then and now kind of did that. They just started fresh, right? But I think the beauty of Doctor Who is that you could invite old fans, from the previous, series, like the old 80s and 90s and so on and so forth series, and bring it to, because it is a story that is kind of linear and non-linear at the same time, so you can kind of play with time, and the beauty of the Doctor is that it's a role like James Bond that you can cast whoever you want to play it. So it's a timeless role. So I think that's the beauty of it. But series 1 was just so iconic, and it has so many great moments. I always say people sleep on Christopher Eccleston's performance, but it was so iconic, and the last episode always breaks. There's so many great episodes, God, from season 1. I always say one of my favorites was Father's Day, where Rose kind of had to go back in time and she wanted to see her dad, but then she causes a paradox. And it's almost a lesson, like the most tragic things kind of like define us in a way. So it's like they have to happen to kind of bring us to where we are now in a way. But I love that, Rose is definitely different from series 1 to, I think, like series 8 or 9. She's very flawed, she's very impulsive, and she runs away with the Doctor almost like instinctively. And I think they had a very great chemistry in series 1, and it was very believable, and they built like almost like romantic relationship up to David Tennant's arc, and there were so many great moments. And I love the practical effects and the costuming of all the aliens and the spaceships. I think the CGI sometimes can feel funky, but for 2005 I think it was pretty good. But I've rambled enough. Akram, let's get your thoughts.
Well, yeah, I think Doctor Who will remain a staple, and especially BBC television. And you mentioned to me before that a lot of Star Wars props they've taken from Doctor Who in the past. Right?
Oh yeah, actually, yeah, a lot of, I think even Battlestar Galactica, I think took. No, I think actually it's the opposite. Star Wars took. Or yeah, you're right. Star Wars took from Doctor Who. I think the old Cybermen outfits were actually used to make a Bosk costume in Empire Strikes Back. So that's what I'm saying. It's a timeless show. It pays homage to so many different genres: time travel, space travel, and I like that the style of the show is like it has kind of like overarching stories, but each episode you could kind of treat it as it's its own serial in a way. You could just jump right into any episode and you get the gist of it right away. It's a crazy old man in a time machine that's bigger on the inside, and he has companions and they have fun adventures. But yeah, it is also, it has its dark moments as well. It's playful, but also the Doctor is a very emotional character as well. And I think what Chris Eccleston brought into the new series was this darker Doctor that we hadn't seen from the originals, right? And it's because of this time war that happened. And I think it was actually, in a way, a great way to kind of explain the hiatus that the show took, right? There was this big war that happened. It changed the Doctor a lot, from being this very carefree person to this very dark and, unempathetic, ruthless at times kind of individual. And he's always a man that doesn't give second chances sometimes. So great characterization.
Do you think his companion, played by Billie Piper, was good in your opinion? Do you have any qualms with her as a companion?
She was a fan favorite for a lot, and she's still my favorite companion now. I think, I don't know, it's between her and Amy for me.
Okay.
I think that each companion brings something different in each series, and I think Rose really brought his humanistic side in a way, because Time Lords are very, I don't know, they feel like they're almost better than everyone in a way. Even the Doctor, at times you can kind of tell, like, because of his vast knowledge of the universe, he kind of like asserts his authority at times. And Rose kind of humbles him throughout the series, and she brings that human element to the story. And she's kind of like our eyes in a way, seeing the universe through, a simple person from Britain's like perspective in a way. And I love each episode that she is in, because, like I said, she's flawed in the beginning. She makes mistakes herself. Like, she makes these very selfish choices. Like I said, like, she tried to save her dad in that one episode, and it caused like a whole paradox, for the timeline and stuff. But she learns lessons over time. And also, I love that this show also brings in the companions' families as well into the show. They feel just as important as the companions themselves. So we had her mom, Jackie, and we had Mickey the idiot in certain episodes, and some of them had like relevant roles. Also, we had like Harriet Jones, like she was the prime minister, and she played a big role at the end of David Tennant's arc. So I love that each character brings something different and something important as well as the protagonist.
Interesting that you say that. The show kind of is a little meta in a sense, because when you have such a long-lasting show, it makes sense that some of the protagonists here will have their family included. It's as if the viewer also is a part of the family, and each episode is so different and coming up with unique ideas that it's their way of showing love to you, the audience, and trying to make sure that you stay with them, because they definitely will stay with you. And, it's also about life, how through the years you also constantly just keep readapting and changing over time. So Christopher Atkins' portrayal, though, do you like it compared to the other ones?
It's funny because like the 9th through 12th Doctors all feel, I think what the actors do a great job is that they make the character feel consistent. But something about Eccleston's role is that he's like purposely goofy at times. Like, he'll pull out like a banana when he should have pulled out like a sonic screwdriver or something. He has like a very, I don't know, quirkiness to him. And it's so funny because like he's known for like some of these dark roles that he's, played after, but he brought such a childlike wonder to the role. And maybe that's why people can kind of like be drawn to the Ninth Doctor in a way, because he doesn't take himself too seriously. And in a way, it's kind of a facade for his character, because the Ninth Doctor, like I said, came out of this time war and had such a burden and a guilt for what he did after. So I like in certain episodes, like the Dalek episode, where the first time we see a Dalek on screen, and you see a different side of him, because the first couple episodes leading up to that episode, it was like he was very childlike, he's very playful, he makes a lot of these quirky jokes. But then you see his hate side for the Daleks and what they did in the war, and how much he becomes a Dalek in a way. He becomes almost very genocidal. So I love that Eccleston has a great duality of the character in certain moments of the series.
And that's really interesting, actually, that you mentioned that, because I think he sets up the kind of tone that, correct me if I'm wrong, that should be coming a little bit later on with the different series. Like, I know that they try to change the tone of the certain Doctors with each new iteration, but do you think that he kind of laid the ground for the rest of the Doctors
For sure, yeah. I think his character definitely sets up a lot of important events and characterizations that we see later on. We see this broken man become more reformed over the series, and the previous iteration before him had to make a lot of hard choices. And in series one, I love the last 2-part episode where he has to face against the Daleks and make a very hard choice of either letting the Daleks destroy every life on Earth, or he does it for them and ends up like doing like a mercy killing for them. But he's broken by this choice. He tries to do it, but he can't because he has, like I said, this human quality about him where he cares too much for life. He even has a respect for the Daleks in a way, and even like all his enemies, he tries to give them like a chance to that. There's a bit of hope inside that they'll actually like change, but everybody just like ruins their chance, and that's something that I've always respected about his character in a way. But yeah, for sure, he definitely. I think Chris Eccleston set up so much for this series, and I think he really paved the way for the success of the series revitalization.
Oh, interesting. Now that we said that about him, I think the next Doctor is a huge fan favorite.
Oh boy!
Why don't you intro us in?
All right, let's get into it, guys. Yes, series 2, the 10th Doctor. This is gonna be a long section, so get ready. So, David Tennant, yeah, he. If Eccleston, really set up, the groundwork for the success of the show, David Tennant definitely refined it. He brought something so amazing and so iconic that even people who don't watch the show or know anything about it could recognize him in an instant. And that's why he's had like such a great discography. Like after this show set up so many great actors for all these like leading roles in like Marvel shows and all these other great shows to come. But yeah, David Tennant brought something new and refreshing to the character. He still had Eccleston's quirkiness, but there was something like cool and like jazzy, like even the way he dressed. Like Eccleston had this leather jacket and David Tennant had like this pinstripe suit, and he was like a skinny guy, and I don't know, there was something about his character like comes out of like a cartoon, but it's still lovable and it still feels like Doctor Who in a way. And David Tennant was I think he even said he was a huge fan of Doctor Who growing up in the series. I think he was a fan of the 4th Doctor's run, so I think he kind of emulated bits of the characterization into his own role. But for sure, yeah, his run I think will definitely be the most popular just because so much happened. He had so many companions, so many great adventures, so many great story arcs. There's too much ground to cover, but yeah, I love Tennant, man. He's definitely hands down, if not the best, one of the best Doctors.
Yeah, well, from what I've seen, he seems like there's a lot of moments where I think he really sells the stakes of certain moments and certain episodes, the way how he's really expressive. And also there's something suave about him as well, his style. It's kind of like you have the Converse sneakers, right? And then you also have just like a suit. It's like, and his hair, the chicken hair. And there's something about it where you can't forget him, and you could spot him in a crowd. And there's something about his eyes. He's a really good eye actor as well. Mm-hmm. And it can be intense at times, and it could be really welcoming. And so that's what I love about David Tennant as a Doctor. Even if I'm not like a huge Doctor Who fan, I will always consider him to be like the poster boy for Doctor Who, at least.
For sure, yeah, he nails the dialogue for sure, hands down, so well. I think he has elements of. I think he had like a theater training growing up, so he has like these very thespian moments where like he's playing very dark side of the Doctor, but he also has these very genuine comedic moments that actually make you laugh. And I think that is such a great way of characterizing and portraying the Doctor on screen, because he is an element of both light and dark in a way. Let's talk about his companions, because well, of course we still had Rose, from the Christmas Invasion. I thought that was such a great episode of introducing his character, because it was all about, who am I in a way. And I love that line he said, I'm a man who doesn't give second chances, and then he lets the the alien warrior like fall down to his death in a way. But he's so funny and funky at the same time. And he's not afraid to take chances either. And, when we see his adventures with Rose, that's when we start to build this romantic relationship a little bit. Although it became bittersweet at the end because it's like you can't have a permanent companion in a way. You can't really have a love interest with the Doctor. So unfortunately, we had to say farewell to Billie Piper for a moment. She comes back eventually, but I always loved Army of Ghosts and Doomsday. I always loved that song that played when Rose and the Doctor are separated by parallel universes, but they're up against this wall, and there's a song playing. It's so bittersweet, man. There's so many great moments from that series. I can't cover everything, unfortunately.
Well, what moment do you think is defining for David Tennant's Doctor in his series?
Gosh, there's so many. Well, for sure, I always say he starred in the episode that I always say is a good gateway to Doctor Who, which is Blink. And it's a really fast-paced episode, and it goes by really fast, and it doesn't even have a lot to do with the Doctor, but I think it's such a good way of telling audiences what this show is about. It's like he takes a step back in it, and actually the main character is actually this girl. She's like a human, and she finds like all these like little Easter eggs on these videotapes of the Doctor, and they're all out of order, but she's watching them as if like she's having conversation with them. And I think that's such a great way of showing who the Doctor is. You don't have time to sit down and ask these questions. You kind of have to just run with it and trust him in a way, which is a lot of what the show is about. It's like a crazy man. You just have to trust what's going on, and he's the answer to everything, basically.
Interesting. Okay. So I'm really interested to know, why is he really a standout? Like, we talked about his characterization, we talked about his personality, but story-wise, why is he a standout in that sense?
I think he kind of had a lot of episodes that revolved around the Time War. Like I said, that was a big event that happened in Doctor Who lore, was this Time War that happened. And it was basically his people, the Time Lords and the Daleks, had this big intergalactic war that spanned throughout time and space. And the only way he could really end it was if he destroyed both civilizations. And that war really caused a lot of ramifications for what happened in the rest of the series. We even saw like the Master at some point. That's his arch nemesis, who's also a Time Lord, also from the original run. I thought John Sims lent something to that role that David Tennant, he's I don't know, deliciously evil for some reason. He's still kind of like a mustache twirling villain, but in his own way, he's like a very like punk, like Time Lord in a way. That's why I think David Tennant's run was so successful, because it felt like Doctor Who, but it was a very modernized style, for new audience. It felt a lot younger, obviously, because you have kids watching this and young teenagers. And I was a young adult watching it as well, right. So I think it kind of lent something to fresh faces.
That's so cool, man. That's really cool. Yeah, I could only imagine little Dylan watching this. That's so awesome. Well, are we done with that to venture to the next time portal?
Yeah, we can move on to fan favorite as well, Matt Smith.
Matt Smith. Let me ask you something about him though, real fast. Is this like his breakout role? Because I feel like after that, probably we've seen him in a lot of.
I can't remember if I watched him in anything before Doctor. I mean, he's obviously a big actor now because of this. So yeah, I would say this is his breakout role. We see him a lot more. He's in The Crown now, House of the Dragon. Right. Even Morbius.
Yeah, Lucian or whatever, Asmongold, whatever his name is. That's cool. Well, tell us about him.
Yeah, well, I think it was hard for him to kind of fill the shoes of David Tennant, because David Tennant had a long run, man. He covered so much ground, so many great stories, so many companions as well. So for Matt Smith, it was different. It was unique in his own way. He definitely kind of had Eccleston's goofiness in the way, but he had this kind of like history teacher look to him. And it just, you felt that energy throughout the whole show. It definitely felt more serialized in his run than it did in Tennant's, where like we had these big overarching stories. But Matt Smith's run, especially with Amy. I thought she was a great companion. She kind of had this. I don't know. She felt like Rose in a way, but like she was, I don't know, more quirky, and she kind of was more combative, and she was more flirty with the Doctor too. And Rory was like her husband that she was going to get married to in the morning, but then she ran off with the Doctor and had like all these adventures. Also, I didn't even mention River Song, who we saw in David Tennant's run, was such an interesting character to have, because her and the Doctor don't meet at different. Well, they meet at different points in time. So basically, his past is her future, and her future is his past in a way. So I thought that's a great way of like timeline storytelling. And we saw her more prominent in Matt Smith's run, and she kind of was like a companion at times, but she kind of was like also like independent. She was like an archaeologist, but like she wasn't afraid to kill, unlike the Doctor. And there's so many great episodes from his run. Vincent and the Doctor, oh my god, it was so beautiful. I always cry during that episode. That's the one where he goes back in time and he meets Vincent van Gogh.
Oh wow.
And if anybody knows, Vincent van Gogh had a lot of mental health issues, and he was very depressed. And then he brings him to this museum in the future that shows all his work. And there's this song that plays. I can't remember the name of the song, but it was so fucking sad. I was like bawling my eyes out the first time I saw it, because like Vincent van Gogh was like crying, and like this guy is like telling him like he's like his favorite artist and stuff. But there's so many great episodes. The Pandorica Opens was also a great story too. I thought it was a great way of telling us, who the Doctor is to a lot of the universe. He's a goofy man, but he's also very scary to a lot of these different, enemies that he has. And the Pandorica Opens, I loved, because it was all his enemies came together. They formed an alliance, and a lot of them hate each other as well, but they came together because they feared that the Doctor was going to destroy the universe through the crack in time. That's even on Akram's shirt. Even that crack was like so scary. I remember like I don't know if Stephen Moffat said it was almost like the Joker's smile in a way. There was just something like menacing. It appears on like each episode as like this little crack in time, and there's like this haunting light that comes through it. That's why Stephen Moffat took over after Russell T Davies, and I think the first run, or the first half of Matt Smith's run, I liked, but then after that, it kind of slowed down for me a little bit. We did lose Amy and Rory eventually as companions, and it was kind of sad to see, because I thought they were so great together. But companions come and go on this show, unfortunately. And then we got Clara Oswald. I'm not gonna lie, guys. I did not like Clara that much. I thought it was fine just having Amy be like the companion throughout his whole run. I don't know. They set Clara up to be like the perfect companion, but there were at times where she was kind of dry, and it's like I don't really get like why she's so important. She did have to save the Doctor at certain points in time, but she's kind of like annoying, to be honest. There's some companions that are like that. People have their favorite companions here and there. But I wasn't a big fan of her. And then this series kind of became dry over the course of the later half up until Capaldi's run, and I wasn't a big fan of some of the stories. They just felt like generic, and like I've seen this already, and it didn't have the magic that maybe the first half did. But that's my thought.
That is interesting, because I know a lot of these actors over time, they get new roles. I wonder if Karen Gillan, she got the role of Nebula around the time when she was working in Doctor Who. I'm not really sure. She was also in that horror movie. And then they have Jenna Coleman, which is basically the female John Wick, if you remember. Or not John Wick, what's his name? John Constantine from Sandman. That's really interesting. I did see some things where a lot of these companions, they somehow sacrifice themselves a lot of times. I noticed that's like a little thing they got in Doctor Who.
Yeah, it's the beauty of the show. Like I said, like some of the companions actually feel more important than the Doctor at certain moments. Like Rose was the bad wolf. She led the Doctor to that point in time, and then we had Donna, who was like the Dr. Donna in a way, and she was like half Time Lord and half human at one point, and what was the other one? Oh god, I can't remember.
Beats me.
Freema Agyeman's character? Martha Jones. Oh, she also saved the Earth from the Master. That's what I said. And even the Rory, Amy, and River all had relevant roles to the story, and at times they were the saviors of the universe. At times, not the Doctor. They had to help him out of pinches as well. And even the marriage of River Song was like an important storyline too, because we didn't know who she was for a long time. The big mystery was who was River, why is she so important to the Doctor, and then it ended up she was number one, Amy's daughter, and number two, she was his wife. So that was such a big episode when that reveal came out. I remember I was like so shocked. I was like, holy shit.
Oh wow, interesting. So I'm glad to see that these companions, they all have like a bigger role to play, or at least they're like not one note companions just for comedic purposes. So that's really cool. It's kind of disappointing that you don't like Clara Oswald. Maybe there's a lot of people in the same boat like you that don't really like her. I heard something that some people like dislike her in the show, unfortunately. But yeah, really interesting. Well, yeah.
Well, moving on, I guess. Well, speaking of Clara, she becomes the 12th Doctor's companion. So Peter Capaldi took on the role after Matt Smith after the Christmas special. Also, the Christmas specials are awesome, guys. Check them out because they're all so quirky and funny, and they're very like in the very Doctor Who style. But yeah, we had Peter Capaldi's run. It was my favorite Doctor, but I think he did lend something. And it's funny because he was actually. Before he took on the role of Doctor, he was in the Torchwood spinoff that took place. Torchwood: Children of Earth. He was that senator guy. If any of you guys were big fans of Torchwood back in the day, so that's where he started. And then he actually became the Doctor, which I thought was like so ironic. Wow. So he was a little bit older. I think it was something different from kind of the younger actors that we've seen from the first three of the reboot. But he still has this kind of like goofy childlike wonder to him that, like I said, feels consistent throughout the Doctor's characterization throughout the series. But I feel like the stories didn't impact me as much, and there weren't too many memorable moments, and sometimes and they always reuse the same monsters and villains sometimes, so it got kind of boring in that regard, because it's like, I mean, we did have Missy, but then like she was fun at times, but like she wasn't like my favorite character as well. That's all I have to say for that.
Really? That's interesting. So, and then after that, I assume Jodie Whittaker's Doctor came and and I wonder if a lot of diehard fans or at least fans that stayed with Doctor Who since they were younger, I wonder if they kind of dropped off a little bit later on. And then after that, it's Nkudi Gawa.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because now we have David Tennant coming back for the special, and that just shows you how much fans loved him. That he's technically the 14th Doctor, and then Nkudi Gawa will be the 15th. I fell off during Peter Capaldi's run. That's why I kind of omit my review of Jodie's run, because I didn't watch too much of her episodes. I saw bits and pieces of, some of her episodes, and I know the Master. I know what happens with like the Timeless Child thing, and I think that's kind of stupid, to be honest. I like that the Doctor, was just a random Time Lord that kind of like defied his tradition. I don't like when they tried to make him like the first Time Lord, or like they try to make him like more relevant than he needs to be. So I wonder how they're gonna play with that. But I have some predictions for what we'll see in the 60th anniversary special, but I know I talked a lot. Akram, do you have any more thoughts? I have actually, because what's interesting is this television series has lasted forever, and with that, technological advancements come into place a little later on. So we have Christopher Eccleston's Doctor, and then we go all the way to Jodie Whittaker's Doctor. What are the differences you've noticed in the way that these are streamed, like the platforms, and also just the camera techniques and the cinematography? Like, how polished did it get? I know Matt Smith for sure. When I seen that, I was like, oh my God, it's so like more HD than the other Doctors. Funny enough, I think even though the older episodes didn't have the same quality that the new ones had, because I do agree. I think the newer episodes now are much more well polished than the older ones. I feel like what they gain in technical quality, they kind of lack in storytelling and character development. So I think that's why people will remember the older series more, because they just had more fun with them than they did in the new ones now. And I mean, maybe I'll come back to the new ones eventually, because I kind of have to recap on what's been happening since Matt Smith's era in time for the 60th special. But in terms of technical quality, I mean, even the CGI, even the bad CGI kind of feels like it's on purpose in a way, because Doctor Who is so outrageous at times. Like it's not a show where like you watch it for like Star Trek. Like you don't watch it for like the realism in a way, because in a way like Time Lords are kind of almost like magic in a way, in the way that they regenerate their bodies and stuff. So you can't really trust the science of everything. I think what they try to do is they try to give the Doctor these really short answers to a lot of these technical, like there's like the most famous line from David Tennant is time is basically a big ball of wibbly wobbly timey-wimey stuff. So it's like he's so knowledgeable that's like you can't really explain like a lot of these technical terms to him. But I think like I'm going on a tangent, but basically, yeah, I think the newer episodes definitely have the quality now. And as far as streaming, it's interesting now they're moving it to Disney Plus from HBO Max or Max now. It is kind of like a family friendly show, but there are a lot of scary moments as well and dark moments that I don't know how families would react. And I don't really know who's still watching Doctor Who anymore. Is it still relevant? I want to get your guys' comments below if you guys are still interested as back then. I'm still passionate about Doctor Who. I think it just launched so many great great moments in sci-fi history. I mean, we had so many spin-offs. We even had a band, Chameleon Circuit, at the time. I remember listening to the albums and listening to all the parodies. But yeah, that's what I had to say.
That's interesting. That's really cool that you stuck with it since the very beginning, and then you just spat in Jodie Whittaker's face and never looked back. You disrespected Jodie Whittaker like Peter did to
Sorry,
Uncle
Jodie.
Ben. Yeah, you just left. You left the car. You left the little phone booth at that point. But that's cool though. I can't wait to get your thoughts in the future. What you've noticed from her new run, and yeah, I mean. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up?
Man, I feel like to rewatch it now because I feel like it's been so long.
Yeah.
It's a lot of nostalgia for me, to be honest. I think, like I said, it lends something to sci-fi that almost like Star Wars kind of feels mature and childlike, and I keep going back to this childlike thing, but I think it's something that even younger audiences can appeal to, and I think everything works. I think down even to like the music is so beautiful. Like if you listen to the score, like down to like the woo like theme. I also love the transitions of each show and how they kind of like evolve over time, and I love that as the Doctor changes, also like the people around him change, like down to like the costuming and like the companions, and how it's kind of modernizing a little bit slow. I see it modernizing every day, and maybe I don't know if that's a good or bad thing, but I think the revitalization of the series was well deserved, and I think, like I said, it offered everything for new and old fans, which I really respected, that they didn't try to reboot the series and try to restart from the ground up. They kind of like expanded it from the previous lore, and I think that makes such for timeless television.
Beautifully said. Wow, that's cool. So if you guys have made it to this point in this video, definitely tell us your favorite moments in Doctor Who, and let's get a conversation going in the comments. But my friend, finally we got to do this. I know you've been waiting so long to do this, about a year, right? It kind of feels good to finally do it.
I know. I had a lot of thoughts, guys, harboring for a year, but yeah, I appreciate you guys sticking around. If you enjoyed Doctor Who, let us know what you thought, and yeah, I can't wait to review the 60th special because it's new ground for Doctor Who. I wonder if it'll be either good or bad. I don't know. Maybe it'll be a fresh start for me as a fan. But yeah, I can't wait to hear what you guys think.
Well, you're here to hear, everybody. And with that, we end this video. Please don't forget to actually like this video. We will be doing a special Doctor Who episode review at the time of this recording tomorrow. So it's coming out Saturday on Disney Plus, so check that out and enjoy it with us. But as for the rest of the content that we got going on, we got plenty of content, as we always say, and we're gonna readapt and re-evolve it. Maybe next time you see us, it's gonna be like a different Filipino and a different whatever I am. So without further ado, Dylan, say your thing.
Yeah, we're a small podcast, guys, but like the TARDIS, we're bigger on the inside, so check us out. We have a lot of videos. We cover so much ground. Yeah, let us know what you thought of this video and of the series and what you think we'll see for the special. But until then, guys, thanks for having lunch with us.
See you guys.